I'll never forget the look of absolute panic in Sierra's eyes when the backing track cut out. 1 second, she was pop royalty, mouthing the words to shattered glass, in front of 20,000 screaming fans at the Staples Center, her sequined bodysuit sparkling under the lights. The next, there was nothing but the deafening silence of a dead microphone and her own screeching, off-key gasp echoing through the stadium speakers. Up in the executive VIP box, my ex-husband Sebastian was screaming into his headset, smashing his fist against the soundproof glass, frantically demanding to know why the audio had failed. He looked up, his face red with rage, and saw me standing in the shadows of the control booth, sipping vintage champagne, my hand resting casually on the master override switch. He froze. He mouthed my name in horror, realizing too late that the game was over. What Sebastian didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the studio rat he'd divorced and humiliated publicly 3 months ago didn't just write the song Sierra was butchering. I now own the arena, the broadcast network, and the very record label he worked for. If you want to know how a girl who was told she was too ugly for radio destroyed the biggest ego in the music industry live on global television, hit that subscribe button right now. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this tea. Grab a snack, because the karma in this story hits harder than a bass drop. Let me take you back to where the nightmare started, long before I was calling the shots from a VIP box. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in a cramped, windowless recording studio in North Hollywood. My throat felt like I had swallowed broken glass. I had been singing the chorus to Midnight Lies for 4 hours straight, trying to get the perfect breathy, seductive tone that Sebastian demanded. Sebastian sat behind the mixing board, scrolling through Instagram on his phone, barely looking up as I poured my soul into the microphone. On the leather couch behind him sat Sierra. She was checking her makeup in a compact mirror, looking bored out of her mind. Sierra was the artist. She was the one with the 2 million followers, the verified checkmark, and the face that was plastered on billboards across Los Angeles. But she couldn't carry a tune if it came with handles. That was my job. I was the ghost, the voice behind the curtain. For 3 years, I had written every lyric, composed every melody, and recorded every single vocal track for Sebastian's prodigy. They would mix my voice, pitch it up slightly, layer it with autotune, and slap Sierra's face on the album cover. "Cut," Sebastian said, finally looking up. He sounded annoyed. "It's too whiny, Layla. You sound desperate. Sierra needs to sound like a queen who doesn't care. Do it again." I leaned into the mic, my hands shaking. "Seb, I can't," I rasped. "My voice is gone. We've done 50 takes. Can we just use the one from an hour ago? It was perfect." Sebastian stood up and walked into the booth. He closed the door behind him, trapping us in the small, soundproof space. The air instantly felt heavier. He put his hands on my shoulders, his grip tight, almost painful. He put on that fake, sympathetic smile that used to make my knees weak, but now just made my stomach turn. "Babe," he sighed, brushing a stray hair from my face. "We talked about this. We are a team. You have the talent, sure. But look at you." He gestured vaguely at my oversized hoodie, my messy bun, the dark circles under my eyes. "You don't have the look. You don't have the star power. Sierra does. We are building an empire here. When she wins, we win. Do you want to go back to waiting tables at the diner? Or do you want to be part of Grammy-winning history?" I bit my lip, looking down at my worn-out sneakers. He knew exactly which buttons to push. He knew how insecure I was about my appearance, how grateful I was that he saved me from poverty. "Okay," I whispered. "One more take." Through the glass, I saw Sierra stifle a yawn and take a selfie, captioning it probably something like, "Late nights in the studio, grinding for my fans #artist life." I sang the line again. And again. By the time we left the studio, the sun was coming up over the palm trees, but I felt nothing but darkness. Things spiraled fast a week later. It was the night of the pre-Grammy Gala in Bel Air. This was the biggest night of the year for the industry. Midnight Lies had been nominated for Record of the Year. Technically, Sierra was nominated, but I knew who did the work. I spent my entire savings on a vintage black dress, getting my hair done, trying to look the part of a producer's wife. When we arrived at the mansion, the driveway was lined with Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Photographers were screaming Sierra's name as she stepped out of the limo behind us, wearing a dress that was barely there, hanging off Sebastian's arm like a trophy. I walked a few steps behind them, clutching my purse. When I tried to step onto the red carpet next to my husband, his mother, Victoria, intercepted me. Victoria was Sebastian's manager, a woman who wore Chanel suits like armor and had eyes like a shark. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed through a frozen smile. "The press line is for talent, Layla. You're clogging up the frame. Go inside and make sure the table is ready. And try not to eat all the appetizers. That dress is already straining at the seams." I pulled my arm away, fighting back tears, and hurried into the venue. I sat at our assigned table in the back, far away from the stage. I watched as Sebastian and Sierra worked the room, laughing with executives, clinking glasses. They looked like royalty. I felt like the help. I kept telling myself it would be worth it. Once we won the Grammy, Sebastian promised we would buy a house in the hills. He promised we would start a family. He promised I could produce my own album under a pseudonym. I was so naive. Halfway through the night, the music lowered. Sebastian took the stage with a microphone. The room went quiet. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, the spotlight reflecting off his perfect teeth. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Tonight is about celebrating success. But success requires shedding dead weight." He paused for dramatic effect. The crowd chuckled. My heart started pounding in my chest. Something felt wrong. He looked directly at me, sitting in the shadows. For years, I've been held back by mediocrity. I've been carrying people who didn't share my vision. But tonight, I am making a change. He reached out and pulled Sierra close to him. She beamed, waving to the crowd. "I am thrilled to announce that not only is Sierra the face of our label, but as of this morning, she is my fiancée." The room erupted in applause. People were cheering. I sat there, frozen, my blood turning to ice. Fiancé? We were still married. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Sebastian," I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the clapping. He continued, talking over me. "And as for my former partner, Layla." He laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "My lawyers have handed you the papers at table 42. We're done. You were a great practice run, sweetie, but I need a muse, not a charity case." A server walked up to me and dropped a thick manila envelope on my plate, right next to my untouched dinner. I opened it with shaking hands. Divorce papers. And worse, a cease and desist order. It stated that any claim I made to authorship of Sierra's songs would result in a lawsuit for breach of contract. I had signed those rights away years ago, buried in paperwork I trusted him to handle. Victoria appeared next to me, flanked by 2 large security guards. "You're making a scene," she sneered, looking at me with pure disgust. "You need to leave. Now. You're trespassing." "I wrote those songs," I screamed, the tears finally spilling over. "I made him. I made her." Sierra leaned over from the stage, holding the microphone. "Ah, poor little mouse," she cooed, her voice amplified to the entire room. "Don't be jealous just because you don't have the X factor. Go back to the trailer park, honey. Security, take out the trash." The crowd laughed. Actually laughed. Flashbulbs went off in my face, blinding me, documenting the worst moment of my life as the guards grabbed my arms and dragged me toward the exit. I lost a shoe. My dress tore on the door handle. They threw me out onto the wet pavement of the driveway, tossing my purse after me. I sat on the curb outside the gates of the Bel Air mansion, shivering in the cold night air. My phone was cracked. I had no ride, no husband, no career, and nowhere to go. I had $40 in my bank account because Sebastian controlled all our finances. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed until my chest hurt. I wondered if this was it. If I should just disappear. That's when the headlights cut through the darkness. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up silently to the curb right in front of me. I didn't look up. I thought it was another guest leaving, maybe slowing down to mock me. But the rear door opened. A man stepped out holding an umbrella. He wasn't a celebrity. He was older, wearing a suit that cost more than my entire life's earnings, with silver hair and a stern, professional face. "Layla Miller?" he asked. His voice was calm, authoritative. I wiped my eyes, shivering. "Go away," I croaked. "I don't have anything left to steal." "I am not here to take from you, Layla," the man said. He extended a hand. "My name is Arthur Sterling. I am the executor of the estate of Jonathan Vance." I froze. Jonathan Vance. The name was legendary. He was the founder of Vance Global Media, the conglomerate that owned half the radio stations in the country, streaming platforms, movie studios, and yes, the parent company of the record label Sebastian worked for. He was a billionaire media tycoon who had died 3 days ago. His face had been on every news channel. What does that have to do with me?" I stammered. Arthur signaled to the driver, who opened the door wider, revealing a warm, leather interior. "Please get in. We have been looking for you for 6 months. Your mother. She knew Mr. Vance in the late 90s. She was a backup singer on his first tour." My heart stopped. My mother never talked about my father. She died when I was 10, taking her secrets to the grave. All she ever said was that he was powerful, and that he didn't know I existed. "We ran the DNA test from the sample you submitted to that ancestry site last year," Arthur explained, holding out a file. "It was a 99.9% match. Jonathan Vance was your father. And since he had no other children and never married..." Arthur paused, his eyes gleaming. "You are the sole heir to Vance Global Media." I stared at him, the rain soaking my hair. "You're lying," I whispered. "I'm a ghostwriter. I just got dumped for a lip-syncing model. I'm nobody." Arthur smiled, a genuine, sharp smile. "Not anymore. As of 9 a.m. this morning, when the probate cleared, you are the majority shareholder of the company that owns Sebastian's contract. You are effectively his boss's boss." He gestured to the car again. "Now, Miss Vance, shall we get you out of the rain? We have a lot of work to do if you want to be ready for the Grammy Awards next month. I believe you have a performance to cancel." I got into that car. As the heated seats warmed my frozen skin, I looked back at the mansion on the hill where Sebastian and Sierra were celebrating their victory. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize they were just seeds, and I was the storm. Over the next 4 weeks, Layla Miller died. And Layla Vance was born. I didn't just want money. I wanted absolute, public destruction. I spent my days in the Vance Global boardroom, learning the ins and outs of the business. I hired forensic accountants to dig into Sebastian's label. What we found was shocking, even for the music industry. Sebastian wasn't just a cheater, he was a thief. He had been embezzling marketing funds to pay for Sierra's plastic surgeries and bot farm followers. He was cooking the books to hide that the label was bleeding money. He was desperate. And desperation makes people stupid. I created a persona, Lady V, the mysterious new chairwoman of the board who refused to show her face. I communicated only through Arthur and encrypted emails. I knew Sebastian was trying to secure funding for a world tour to promote Sierra's debut album. He needed $10 million, or his label would go under. So, I had Arthur set up a meeting. Not with me, but with his representatives. We told Sebastian that Vance Global was interested in financing the tour, but there was one condition. To prove Sierra was a viable investment, she had to perform live. No backing tracks, no heavy auto-tune, at the huge corporate showcase we were holding at the Staples Center. It would be broadcast live to millions of viewers. Sebastian, arrogant as ever, agreed immediately. He figured he could trick us. He figured he could bribe the sound guys to play a pre-recorded vocal track that sounded live, just like he always did. He didn't know that I had already fired his sound crew and replaced them with my own team. The night of the showcase arrived. The atmosphere was electric. I sat in the shadowed VIP box, wearing a red couture gown that cost more than Sebastian's car. I watched him pace backstage on the monitors. He looked nervous, but smug. Sierra was in her dressing room, complaining that her water wasn't room temperature. They had no idea that the sound engineer, a guy named Marcus, was waiting for my signal. "Ladies and gentlemen." Sebastian's voice boomed over the arena speakers. "Prepare to witness the voice of a generation. The one and only, Sierra." The crowd roared. Smoke filled the stage. Sierra rose up on a hydraulic lift, striking a pose. The music for Shattered Glass, my song, the song about my heartbreak, started playing. Sierra brought the mic to her lips. She closed her eyes, feigning emotion. And that's when I pressed the button on the console in front of me. Cut the track, I whispered into my headset. Instantly the lush, produced vocals vanished. The backing music dropped to a whisper. All that was left was Sierra's raw microphone feed. And it was horrific. She was screeching off-key, breathless. "Baby, don't you brack," she choked, realizing the track was gone. She tapped the mic frantically. "Hello? Hello?" Her voice cracked like a teenage boy's. The crowd went silent. Then a murmur of confusion rippled through the stands. Someone laughed. Then more people laughed. Sierra looked towards the sound booth, eyes wide with terror. "Fix it," she screamed, her shrill voice echoing. "Seb, fix it." Sebastian was running towards the soundboard, but two large security guards blocked his path. "I'm sorry, sir," one of them said. "Restricted area." "Let me in. Do you know who I am?" Sebastian yelled. That's when I leaned forward into the light of the VIP box. I grabbed the dedicated microphone connected to the Voice of God system. The one that overrides everything in the stadium. "We know exactly who you are, Sebastian," I said. My voice, my real voice, the one on all the records, boomed through the arena. It was rich, powerful, and unmistakable. Sebastian froze on the floor. He looked up. He squinted against the lights. "Layla," he whispered, but the camera caught his lips moving on the giant screens. "Actually," I continued, standing up so the spotlight hit me. "It's Layla Vance now, chairwoman of Vance Global." The crowd gasped. The jumbo screen cut to a close-up of me. I smiled, sharp and dangerous. "And I think it's time everyone heard how this song is supposed to sound." I nodded to Marcus. He hit play on the instrumental track. I began to sing. From the VIP box, without a warm-up, without auto-tune. I belted out the chorus of Shattered Glass, with a power that shook the walls. The audience went absolutely wild. They recognized the voice. It was the voice they loved. The voice they thought belonged to the girl on stage. Sierra stood there, humiliated, frozen in her sequin bodysuit, while I serenaded the stadium with the truth. When I finished the verse, the applause was deafening. I looked down at Sebastian. He looked small, defeated. I spoke into the mic one last time. "Security, please escort my former husband and his karaoke partner off the premises." "And Sebastian? You're fired. Oh, and the forensic audit of your embezzlement is currently being sent to the FBI. Enjoy prison." As the police moved in to cuff Sebastian, and Sierra ran off stage tripping over her heels, I raised my glass of champagne to the camera. The live stream comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. The internet was breaking. I had taken back my voice, my name, and my life. They tried to bury me in the dark, but they forgot that stars shine brightest when you turn out the lights.